What's up, everybody? Today we're unboxing the Moza R9 wheelbase and the SRP pedals and testing them out on a few games and seeing how we like it with the trucking steering wheel that we reviewed a few weeks ago. Same thing as the trucking wheel. The packaging is impeccable and it's nice. Some stickers came with it. There's no concern with this product getting damaged during shipping with the way that they use the styrofoam and the way everything is packed in these boxes. They've done a great job of utilizing space with the little cutouts in the styrofoam. They've done a great job with utilizing the space here. It's everything's packed real tightly in this package. But like I said, it feels safe. It feels like it's not going to get damaged during shipping. The nice bag that the base came in was pretty sweet. You can see it's also another layer of protection during shipping, and I would imagine for somebody who wants to use this at different places and travel with it, it would be a nice way to package it back up and keep it safe while you're traveling to, say, a friend's house to have a session with friends. And a few things to mention that's really personal preference and not a problem is this isn't a steering wheel that you can just take out of the box, plug in, and use. There is some assembly you have to do with it. The base needs a mount to mount somewhere. You could put it on your desk by itself, but it won't be secure. It would move around, and so this mount that we're putting together is specific for trucking and for the trucking wheel, so it'll give you a nice angle that is similar to a semi, which doesn't really transfer to iRacing or Farming Simulator very well. Farming Simulator almost transfers to, but it's a comfort thing as well. If you want the steering wheel flat or vertical, I guess, then this mount won't be the best for you. If you want it similar to like a 45-degree angle or pushed up like a trucking semi wheel is, it's a perfect base to go with, or a perfect mount to go with this base and wheel setup. That being said, this mount will work vertically, but since it's under the desk, the wheel is absolutely too low when you have it vertical, but then when you tilt it up, it gets to a nice space where your arms can be at a nice 90-degree angle and at your elbow, so that the ergonomics there is working pretty well for you. And the same thing with the packaging of the pedals. It's a really good system that they've come up with the styrofoam, as I mentioned, and it's very secure, very safe. I wouldn't be concerned about any damage during shipping. Broken record, but here we can see we have a little footrest stand that the pedals mount to, and they are very real. They feel very real, like you would be in a vehicle. It also comes with some adjustments for the pressure of the brakes, and I'll be playing around with that later. Right now, I think the default one it's pretty well set up for something that would be racing, and it makes sense, Moza Racing. So something with a regular vehicle like a tractor or a semi, you might want a little bit more play in the brakes, where this one is the spring is very tight on it, but it comes with multiple springs with different pressures, so you can set it up based on your liking. And you can see me kind of playing around with them and just feeling them there. The gas pedal doesn't have the spring, and it's very responsive without it, or it doesn't have the pressurized spring system like the brake does. I didn't set up the clutch because I don't play that way. I usually play an automatic. I don't actually play a manual. I don't have a shifter for that yet. Someday I might add that to my setup, but we're going to keep going, get this all plugged in and do some work under the desk, and then let's show some gameplay, because that's what it's really about. The unboxing's fun, the building it, putting it together is fun, but how does it actually work? So one of the last things I want to show before we go into the gameplay is the pit house here. It's called the Moza Pit House, and it's where you can configure everything. You can control the force feedback percentage, the throttles. You can set your min throttle and everything and play around with that and adjust it based on exactly how you want it to be configured. And one of the things that I've kind of run into an issue with is the brakes seem backwards, which I guess it's at full and then you'd release the brake technically. Seems to be how it works. It's kind of counterintuitive there, but you can adjust that there as well. But then you can also launch games and configure games on the right side here. And it's very obvious, being on this channel, we're missing a game over here. You can see a lot. Oops, scrolling a little too fast. We have American Trucking on the top, Euro Trucking, some Formula 1 games, Dirt, Project Cars. So games that it'll work, automatically with is pretty sweet. And we come in here to the base, and you can change the road sensitivity and all kinds of things that you can change. The wheel speed, the game force feedback shows here, the max steering wheel angle you can adjust. A lot of things that you can come in here and adjust that are somewhat above my head. So people that are doing like actual racing, I could imagine are doing a lot of adjustments on here, and it's pretty sweet. It's a pretty sweet piece of software. Here you can see we can configure the buttons a little different as well. Change some colors on the color scheme on how it adjusts to the RPMs. And then some other things that they have here. We haven't set up this hub yet, but this hub, from what I understand, will help with a lot of our cable management systems. And then if we get to the clutch, we don't have set up, but the brakes, we can see the output of the curves. I don't know. I'm not a expert on this stuff, so but you can calibrate it. Calibration in progress. It has a cooldown and everything. So if it's, I imagine if it's not working as you felt it has, or starts adjusting the way it's reacting to you pressing the gas pedal, come in here and calibrate it and it'll get all set up for you. One last thing I did want to mention before we get into it, and there's a lot of customizations in here that could be very beneficial to you for certain games you're playing. And we'll see this in Farming Simulator. We'll play around with this and I'll show you in a little bit. But right now I've adjusted the maximum angle to 720 degrees. So I'll only be able to turn it 360 degrees each direction. And the base actually will stop the wheel from turning that many rotations. And then we crank this up to 2700. You can see I can keep rotating till I get to 1350. If I turn to the right and then we adjust it to the left, we can keep on cranking it the same way. And the base will control all of that for us as we get all the way back to 0. And that's a lot of rotations. I don't know when you would need that, but you can. And so the default one is at 1800. But yeah, so we'll play around with that. You get kind of lost if you're playing a game that doesn't have force feedback and doesn't automatically straighten the wheel like Farming Simulator, since it's not actually configurable in game for that. But it is in here. You can make some adjustments to make the quality of life or the way we play the game a little bit better. And so another feature that I think is pretty sweet is this center option. So I've cranked it a little bit to the right and I've hit center, and that's going to recalibrate that at 0. But then if we come back and put it straight, we'll hit center. And why that's important is because I have the mounts upside down to where 0 used to be right here with the steering wheel upside down, which on the mount, it's right side up. The software gives you the ability to correct that, so you can have the base either direction based on the type of mount you're mounting it to. But let's get into some gameplay. We've jumped into Atlanta Motor Speedway here on iRacing. And let's see if I remember how to do this. Steering wheel's so responsive. I'm not going to go through like setting this up in iRacing. You'll need to do that on your own. But the process is pretty simple. iRacing actually walks you through it and does a nice device setup type wizard. But right now, I would say, as far as the base is concerned, it feels like it's working great. The big problem that I have with this specific steering wheel for iRacing is it doesn't feel... It feels too big. And I think it's great for American trucking and Euro trucking, as we'll get into that in a little bit. And that makes sense. The steering wheel is called a trucking steering wheel. So, but what I wanted to kind of take into consideration here was if you're buying something like this, that is pretty expensive. You're going to want to get your money's worth out of it. And can you use it for multiple games? Do you need to buy multiple steering wheels? I don't think you do. Me personally, I would want a smaller steering wheel if I was going to start playing iRacing regularly again. And I think this would be a great setup. One thing I can say, compared to the Logitech G29 that I've been using for years, I've done some testing on iRacing, and I've already gotten better lap times with this. It just, there's something about it that is just more realistic and better for sim racing. And we're cranking here. Just a nice test session, and now I'm going to lean back in the chair and get a little more relaxed, a little farther from the steering wheel. But I mean, it's comfortable. It's we get into the wall almost there, but it's just a little too big, and I would like my hands a little closer so that I don't have to have this huge steering wheel. But it does the job well. Try to stay low on this turn here, and as far as the force feedback's concerned, it feels like you're on a road right now. Even though I don't have a simulation rig that I'm sitting in that's moving, through my hands, you can kind of feel every bump and groove in the racetrack. You can kind of feel the wheels jumping or the tires jumping around, and it's an impressive piece of hardware. It's solid. It's a huge step up from something like the G29 that does a good job as well for a low budget one, but this just is another level. And now into American Trucking Simulator. The steering wheel is harder to turn because of the game we're playing, so it's adjusting to the vehicles that we're driving, which is really sweet. And this right here, just like watching the steering wheel on the screen and me turning it in real life here, it's just lined up so well. I can see exactly what's going on. As we cut into oncoming traffic here. I didn't even see a light there. I guess we ran a red light. And one of the things we didn't mention while playing iRacing is the indicators on the steering wheel are going up, so for we to know how the RPMs are. I can also see that on the dash, but it's a nice addition so that we know when to shift gears. But I don't know about you, I'm not really staring at the steering wheel while I'm driving. I'm looking at the road, so having it on the screen is more important than the steering wheel, but it's a nice feature. Brakes are super responsive in American Truck Simulator. This feels like what this wheel is designed for. And as you see the angle on the screen there of the steering wheel kind of facing up a little bit, that's how the steering wheel is here. Very cool. Just going around these curves here, it's so smooth. The steering wheel just feels like I'm in a truck. Yeah, this just feels great. Just I can't state that enough. It feels real. I'm kind of just turning the wheel a little bit, and you can kind of see it in the camera switching back as the truck responds to it. Well, and since this is a Farming Sim SWU video, I thought we'd jump into Cattle Ranch here and drive some tractors around. So one of the first things that I noticed, and we kind of talked about this in the Pit Boss, or the Pit House demonstration, I'm just going to keep turning the wheel. And now I'm a little confused, right? I got the wheel turned all the way. Now I want to start straightening it out. And I gotta keep going. Now it's straight, but my brain's not gonna necessarily remember that. So if I go this far, and we see the wheel stops turning, the tire stops turning. So that tells me that we can go ahead and get into the pit house again here. The max steering angle, we're gonna come in here and we're gonna set to 720. And now I'm at 360, so now I can go back to 0 because I had the wheel turned. So we're back to 0. So now we go back in the game, you can see the tires are just responding so much faster, and there's not as much of a temptation to turn the wheel a bunch of times. So now we can see here, we're just barely turning the wheel, so that might be a little too sensitive now, but that feels much better. And as far as the forced feedback goes, there is no forced feedback. The wheel's not going to correct itself back to center like real vehicles do when you let go of the steering wheel. So let's go back into the pit house here. We have a wheel spring strength. This setting gives a return to center effect, which is suited for titles that may have no convincing force feedback effects. The larger the value, the stronger the center effect is. So what I want to do is bump this to 100 and go back into Farming Simulator now and see how that feels. The wheel is starting to correct itself. So what my complaint early on with using this was there was no force feedback, there's no restriction. So now there's a little bit of a spring action. When I turn the wheel, it will correct itself. This right here is 100% the main setting that is required for games like Farming Simulator that don't support force feedback. So let's go back into that app one more time. There's a wheel damper. The damping assembly makes the steering wheel more stable, but it may give a sense of stickiness. Small damping can make the steering wheel more lively, but too much, it sounds too much will be insane. So let's go ahead and set this to like 30 and see how it feels. And now we have pretty much a combination that feels pretty similar to iRacing or American Trucking. We don't get the like bumping of the road like we do with the force feedback on those games, but now the steering wheel at least feels by itself more realistic. And that alone makes this base 100% better than the G29. We could do the similar things with the G29, but the quality of the product feels a lot more plasticky than this feels. This feels like what you would feel in a real vehicle, as I've said multiple times. And cruising around, driving in this, just feels great. Even in cab view, which if you follow my channel, I don't do a lot of cab view because I can't see the implements and see the stuff that I'm working on, and I'm just not that good at farming to do that. But It does. It feels great. The steering wheel isn't like lined up perfect with the way the steering wheel's moving on the screen as it is in my hands here. But that's something you can easily ignore if you're... I really like to look at the tires more and see how much the tires are responding to me turning the wheel. And it feels great. And let's just turn this, and then I was able to let go of the steering wheel and it just started going straight, which it was not doing before I discovered that setting. So great piece of hardware mixed in with an amazing piece of software is the key to make things like this really usable for any game that has the ability to use a steering wheel. And I can't say more about how excited I am to keep using this in the future. I will probably buy a smaller steering wheel, one of their more racing ones that's a little bit smaller than this, and potentially buy the mount that goes on the desk so that I have more control over where I'm at. My biggest complaint is how far away I am from my desk with the trucking mounts. Just not my style of sitting and playing. I also have to like kind of move the keyboard over here because I don't have enough buttons on the steering wheel to do everything that you need to do in Farming Simulator. You have to get out, walk around. I'm not a big fan of these joysticks here, but I do have them set up on the steering wheel to change the angle. I just don't feel comfortable with that because I've never played that way. I've always used the mouse for that interaction. So it's a little different, something to get used to. And then on the other side, you can set up the other joystick on the right side hand to do like front loaders and things like that. So there is some functionality that's available, but I would prefer to have an actual joystick next to me, which is another purchase I'll probably be making to make my setup complete. For the price, you're getting a lot of functionality. You're getting a great, a really well-made product that feels like it's going to last a long time, and it's not something that you're going to have to worry about replacing. And backing up, oh my goodness, that just felt clean. The steering wheel was resisting me because I was turning it and holding it. What a good piece of software. I can't say enough about the Pit House and what Moza's done with this. And thank you so much for sending me this and having me try it out. After I get my setup cleaned up, my cable management figured out we do have this Moza Racing hub that I'm gonna get figured out where it'll help me with the cable management from what I understand. It has some ports and I can have this underneath the desk where all the cables go to. And then everything won't have to go to the base like it does now. All the cables have to come up the base and they're kind of in the way for your legs a little bit. So we'll figure that out. But I love it. This is a great piece of hardware and I love how easy it is to just kind of pop this off, even though it's going to hit my mic. And the steering wheel I can just put away. Probably get something that I can like hang it on so I can protect it, because let's see if I can get this on the camera. Yeah, you can see those little prongs in there. Those are very important. They're very sensitive. You don't want to break them. So that concludes my video. Thanks for hanging out. I enjoy it. I recommend it. There'll be a link in the description for how you can get this exact setup. I'll catch you next time.